Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to Let's Talk Maywood on Diversity Today Media. I am your host, Dr. Reggie Ratliff, and joining me is my co-host, my co-laborer in the vineyard, and still expert investment advisor, Terrence Hollingsworth. Terry, are you there?
What's up, Reggie? How you doing today?
Good, man. God is good. How are you?
Good. Busy.
Yes, sir.
But busy is always good. And so
Yeah.
we're here. Let's do it.
First
Hey,
of all, I
before
want to
we
know.
get going though,
Yeah,
I do have to say, uh, I got my Triton shirt on
I
today,
see that. I see
right?
you, Trojans. Yes, sir. Which one
Nationals
you
this
wearing
week.
for?
Well, this Nationals is this weekend. They got all 10 of their guys down. So, in the
Nice.
words of Dan Gable, wrestle hard, make your own luck.
There you go. Absolutely. Triton has a rich tradition in wrestling. Many national championships, All Americans, national qualifiers, and just well-rounded people who go on after Triton to do great things at D1, D2, D3, NAIA, whatever the case may be, and beyond that in life, right? You and I are examples of that.
Yes, sir. Triton is one of those that community college system it's a worthwhile place to start if in most cases you have the talent but don't have the grades.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, there are people who just aren't ready to go to a 4-year college when they graduate from high school. They may want to be involved in the 2-year program at Triton and whatever it may be to get that associates before transferring to a 4-year institution. So it's not just only grades, but it's also maturity and mental preparation, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Uh,
The way that colleges, high schools are now with the curriculums and all these other things, there's a great pathway to being dual enrolled, getting some of those college classes out of the way. And by the time you get to a community college, then you're one and done.
right,
Get your 1 year done. You have 3 years plus a red shirt at the
right.
4 year institution. And, it's a pathway that more people should look into, is all I would say about that.
Man, you're right, Terry. And I know that for myself, the one thing I regret is not taking a year off before transferring to Fair State. I would have had
Hmm.
3 years, 3 All-American seasons instead of doing 2 years at Triton. I should have redshirted my first year because I was just coming from 98 pounds at Proviso East and trying to still build up to 118 at Triton. And physically,
Yeah.
I was still, maturing. So I should have trusted Coach Clem Delaney, rather, who was also a national champion at Triton, and my coach at the time in 86, 87, and 88. The redshirt that freshman year so I could let my body grow and mature. Then I have 3 straight years. And, to this day, man, I often wonder what could have been. But, that time at Triton was great. And I also know they have a great nursing program, too.
Yeah. I wonder about, because they all these community colleges kind of have the technical uh classes, so nursing, HVAC, electrician
Right,
programs and stuff like this.
right.
We need to do a better job of getting our students, especially our Black students, into these programs, especially in the space we're in today, because as the a college degree has some value, but there's
Mhm.
also a lot of value in the trades, and
For
guys
sure.
are going to trades making 100 plus almost right away.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely trending that direction where learning a trade as an option of going to a 4-year college to get a bachelor's degree, that is definitely the way to go. And you can make good money, even in the IT field. You don't necessarily need a college degree to get your first IT job. And that's because it's such a great demand in IT, now with the evolution of AI, to complement cybersecurity, and that kind of thing. You know, we're moving in a different direction as it
Yeah.
relates to education.
So you're at a pretty high tech school, right?
Hmm.
Um, most kids that come from your school, what are they doing?
So it's a great question. So most of my students come from the Middle East. They come from Saudi Arabia, Palestine, Turkey, Egypt, that kind of thing. So Morocco, just all over because it's an Arab school, a Muslim school. So it's a religious school, a private school. And when they graduate from the school in Virginia, they go on to like George Mason, George Washington University. Some go to Northern Virginia Community College, which is one of the largest community colleges in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And so they'll go to like Catholic University. Some venture off to New York. They'll go to like an NYU or Stony Brook. Very few go like there's a couple students who are going to like University of Chicago, and then there's a student of mine who is in the IB program, business program. She's attending DePaul University right now in Chicago, and she absolutely loves it. And with Saudi students, it's crazy because the parents, for the most part, want their students to be relatively close. Um, they're not really big fans of them going to like UCLA or, University of Louisville University or whatever. Not going far away. They want to keep them close.
Mm-hmm.
But the Saudi government, when they graduate, and they have to have a certain GPA. And when they go to a college, it has to be a upper tier college, like a George Washington, like an American university, like a Catholic university, Georgetown University. And when they qualify for those schools and attend those schools, they receive up to $1,800 a month stipend from the Saudi government.
Oh wow. Okay.
Up to $1,800 a month. And as long as they maintain their grades and everything, they're covered. They don't have to work. A lot of the parents, they're pretty well off. They may work for the embassy or they may have their own business, that kind of thing. But these students, man, these particular students, they coming in a parking lot with like Mercedes Benz and, Teslas. I'm like, and this ain't their parents. This is theirs. So
what I was about to say, it sounded like Fenwick.
like Fenwick, absolutely, it's like Fenwick. But the students for the most part they're hardworking. There's a little arrogance, ain't no question about it. But they do work hard. They earn their grades. At least in my class, they earn their grades, and they go on to higher academia for the most part.
So let me ask you this question, because people seem to believe that in the Black community, we're not having conversations about investments, but in white communities and things like this, and in their space, that they're absolutely having conversations about investing over the dinner table and things
Right.
like this. What is your experience there?
I can tell you that coming from the background that I came from, mostly African American community in Maywood, but even venturing out to, live and or work or compete in other states and that kind of thing, those environments where they're not African American, they're different ethnicities, race, and that kind of thing. They talk about it. The problem with us, Terry, is that we do have these conversations for those of us who are in the field of business, economics, finance, that kind of thing, because we see the path our children need to take. So we talk to them about, the college savings plan, or we talk to them about stocks and some bonds, and importance of having an investment account, things like that. We don't talk about it enough.
Yeah.
And when I work in a Fairfax County, which is one of the wealthiest counties in the United States, like if you make those who are familiar with the DMV, several counties, Prince William County, Loudoun County, I think is the wealthiest county in the United States. And then you have a few other counties. If you make 150,000 a year, you're still at the poverty line almost.
Mm-hmm.
So the people out here like, oh, you make 150,000, that's cute.
Yeah, right.
So, but they're so progressive out here. But with that said, Terry, they talk about finance, like the PTO, the parent teacher organization. They're strong. They come out and they talk about things like that on behalf of their children, or just building wealth as it relates to their children and their future. In the African American community, there is some talk, but it's more mumbling than full blown conversation.
Mm-hmm.
From what I see. So I'm not going to say it's non-existent, because there are a lot of intelligent African American males and females who are in the field of business and finance. But as you know, who you work in investment every day, there aren't that many African Americans in the field of finance and economics. So our conversations are more limited.
Yeah, so it's I tend to comment sometimes on things when I see on social media when I see bad information.
Right.
Um, I really hate that people are giving advice and people are listening and all these things, and it's not awesome. I mean, there's this movement now, not to step on anybody's toes, but to say stuff like you got to fall in love with money, or you have to
Oh,
have
yeah.
a money mindset and all these
Right.
things.
Right.
And that's dangerous
Yeah.
because you can feel a certain way about money, but you have to understand the principles around it in order
Yeah.
to have a chance at it at all,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
You're never going to feel comfortable. I mean, at the end of the day, you can make a trade. You don't know if the next day that trade is right or wrong. But if you don't understand the principles, guess what? You're going to, maybe buy it and then all of a sudden be like, oh man, it's down a little bit. I'm going to sell it and I'm going to preserve my cash. And
Right.
then 2 weeks later, a month later, guess what? It is higher. And
Right.
so,
Right.
um, it's tough. Let
How
me
does that
ask
make
you
you
this.
feel, though, Terry? Let me ask you this question first. How does it make you feel when you see the posts on social media about giving advice from those specifically who are not qualified to offer
Mhm.
investment advice and talk about how you should use your money in terms of bonds, mutual funds, and policies you could draw down from life insurance policies to use that for whatever, to buy a house or for paying bills. How does that make you feel, being that you have been trained and certified and expert in your craft?
Um, I don't know. I say that because I'll say it this way. The reason why the black community, lower income people have a hard time getting investment advisors to come and deal with them is because people just don't act on good advice. They don't know what to act on. And
Hmm.
so many of us, uh, we 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 get stuck in this place where, um, do you spend time with someone that you're not going to make money with, or do you do the work that you have to so that you can make money, pay your bills, do all those things?
Right.
Um, so I would say, on some level, I'm not frustrated, but because I understand it. I understand that in the black community, for the most part, we have taken our cues from the church and school, and neither
Yeah.
one of those institutions really do a good job at explaining wealth creation and
Right.
investing and things like
Right.
that.
Right.
So I kind of feel sorry for people because they don't have a an outlet. But the reason why I do it is because what I know is when I started in the business, guess what? I didn't know anything,
Right.
right? I know that if my dad, who worked for a company that did not have a 401k plan, but he knew enough to have an IRA,
Hmm.
if he would have had the knowledge that I have, he probably would have had 10 times the amount of money
Right.
in his IRA than what he had. And so that's what makes me do things like this when
Hmm.
otherwise I wouldn't. And that was the question I was going to have for you. What makes you go and organize master classes and do this show when, in fact, it's hard to pull the money, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, I take the knowledge that I gained from my dad, just watching him write checks to pay bills in the 70s. Our conversations that we used to have when I was growing up. And they were not formal conversations, they were impromptu conversations. Why are you writing these checks? What is this financial report? What does that mean? Why do you have a budget? That's how it started. And then it started to grow a little bit. Because my parents, limited knowledge with stocks even for them,
Hmm.
but they were even able to answer the basic questions. Um, why does a stock even exist? Um, what do you mean I can own part of a company if I buy shares? you know.
Hmm.
And then as I went through school, we didn't talk a lot about that, certainly at Proviso East or, middle or at Garfield Elementary School, because that wasn't the focus. But I still had questions, a lot of unanswered questions. I knew I was good with numbers because my dad was an engineer. I knew I was good with logic as far as writing and things, reporting, because my mom was an educator.
Yeah.
So it was in my family. So I knew I wanted to work with something with numbers. So that's when I started to take a deeper dive in the world of business and finance. But Terry, I didn't really figure it out until I was about to graduate from Triton, that I wanted to do something related to finance, and that was accounting. And it was like a natural thing for me to do accounting. And when I grew from that into finance, going for my master's, that's when I really started picking up the pace about technical analysis, fundamental analysis, you know, um, getting more technical terms, reverse stock splits and 2-to-1 splits and all that. But by then, I was working at financial institutions, Northern Trust, the wealth management division, or Scudder Invest, Zurich Scudder Investments in Boston and Chicago, that kind of thing, and working for a consulting firm in Florida when I started traveling around the country, working with all the major corporations and looking at their financials and looking at those lines, talking about you know their shares and ownership and that kind of stuff. It really heightened my level, which made me go back for my doctorate eventually, because I was really in tune with that. Because I didn't learn this formally in growing up in Maywood. So,
Hmm.
coming back to Maywood from the DMV in 97, when I started Eternal Light Community Services, like, I don't want to just do tutoring. I don't want to just do mentoring. Everybody and mama doing that. I want to do something that's going to be unique, that's going to create a vision that leads to financial responsibility. And that was the finance classes and the business classes. So for me, that was like a aha moment. So the 20 years I did that I was living in Maywood in the Chicago area, I just tried to spread the knowledge that I gained in academia, in corporate America, and then, you know, share that information at the Boys and Girls Club, former Boys and Girls Club. But prior to that, Dr. Yu's office, prior to that, was a Masonic Temple. And we just
Hmm.
turned the whole thing out. And you and I did classes in there. Um, and it was packed. We had almost 100 kids in that building.
Hmm.
And most of them was learning about finances if they weren't doing sports with the, Eternal Light Basketball League, which later became the Danka Basketball League, and the mixed martial arts classes and the wrestling classes with James Hanna, you know, um, and the volunteers from Loyola, the Stitch School of Medicine, and Dominican University teaching these classes about dieting. So we were doing a lot when it came to finance and business, and it really helped the community. Like, they became more knowledgeable about the world of business and finance, and some of those students have graduated from college, and now they're grown adults now and moving on. And the foundation, though, was laid when we were talking about business and finance back in 2000 and 2003.
So I would make I want to make a statement that most people won't appreciate. But if you hear people say that they don't teach this stuff in school, about wealth creation and stuff like this, um, you know, you should ask the extra question, or maybe you should just, that should be the cue to go someplace else, because what we do in finance is basic algebra,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
If you can pass algebra one, then you will be able to solve financial questions,
Right.
and things like this. What would you say? Why do you think the gap exists between what's being taught in school and then the actual thing that's happening in terms of, you know, investing, and how to, do something basic like how much money do I need to put away for
Yeah.
for retirement?
I just don't think that was the vision. At least growing up in Maywood in the '70s, Terry. You got to understand the Great White Flight took place in the '60s, so we were moving in from the South and the South Side of Chicago. I mean, my family was on the Northwest side the of the city, coming from the projects, and moved in Maywood in '72. I was a little boy, but we were all about uniting, supporting the businesses that existed that came into fruition, like White Way and Pick and Pay and AMP and you know just so many other stores, Chats Corners, Nat Flash Car Wash. I mean, there was so many businesses, that black owned businesses that were coming in place, but we were focusing on pooling the money, circulating the money, as opposed to investing it to get a return on investment that will last for the next generation, future generations.
So you named a lot of businesses that I heard of, right?
Yeah,
I got there in what, 92.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So a lot of them wasn't there. But
yeah.
what happened to those businesses? Did they pass down to the second generation? Did they close with the matriarch or patriarch?
Yeah, so when you think about those stores that I mentioned, as well as Robinson's gas station and others, a lot of the Gen X's moved away.
Okay.
There was a lack of interest, and there was really no one to pass it down to, in terms of the local businesses. White Way closed for whatever reason. It was a staple in the village of Maywood. Same thing with the other businesses throughout the village of Maywood. It just, from my purview, it was the businesses that may have been started by a parent or grandparent or whatever. There was really no other place to pass it down to. That's part of it. So a lot of them moved away. Then there were some who just didn't survive because of the economic times, and it became more cumbersome to run a business at an elder age, and they died, and that became a vacant land, and that's why you have so many vacant lands in Maywood. But it was more of a disinvestment of Maywood
Okay.
that took place in the '70s and the '80s. Actually, it really started hitting in the mid '80s through the '90s.
How much influence do you think our focus on in the 80s and the 90s, even to the present, um, to go to college and earn a degree versus opening a business?
Oh, that was a talk to go to college, get a degree. That was a talk through the '90s. My baby graduated from high school. He's going to University of Wisconsin Parkside, to get a degree. But what did you do with that degree once you receive it? Then you go on and get a job. Instead of saying, you got the degree, now come and help keep this business going. And so that is what I see as a little different in our community compared to other communities, whether it's by choice or by force. Um, we did not return to the community what was provided to us, and that was resources, not
Mm-hmm.
just living there physically, but giving access to resources. And that is what's different between Maywood and other communities that are non non-African American, from my perspective. And I'm not even just talking about Maywood, Terry. I,
Yeah.
I'm talking about other communities. I'm talking about the East St. Louis, Illinois. I'm talking about the Gary, Indiana, when the plant shut down. I'm talking about Detroit, Michigan. When they moved to Southfield, Michigan, and Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, they left Detroit because the jobs left, and they had
Mm-hmm.
all the eggs in one basket. Now Detroit is making a comeback finally. They blame Coleman Young, in the '80s, who was a mayor for many years, for the debacle that happened economically in Detroit. There was no reinvestment. You could say the same thing in Washington D.C. When the mayor at that time got caught with the drug.
Oh man, good old Barry.
Yeah, yeah, right. She set me up. She set me up. Marion Barry. But you know what? They got a street named after him now. They revere this man so much. for the things he did do. He was a brilliant man. He was a brilliant man, academically and career wise. He just made bad decisions. Or even check it out, Kwame Kilpatrick.
Yeah.
In Detroit. I mean, his mom was a Supreme Court judge in Michigan. She couldn't even save him from what he did. So my point is, we are not reinvesting in our community.
So
So
let me ask you this question. Right or wrong, I have said that we have made a mistake in focusing on education as the way to close the wealth gap.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
tell me if I'm right or wrong, or what's your opinion on that?
Like many who grew up in Gen X and even Gen Y, the goal was to go to college, get an education. Um, I was fortunate to go on when I got to Fair State, have to go on a scholarship, to get my degree and be able to move forward in that journey. But many who were pushed to go to college did not go to college because it was college or bust. And
Yeah.
during the 70s, Terry, there was this huge plant, and there was one, the Canada Dry plant right there next to Winfield Scott. And then there was the other one that was on St. Charles, 9th Avenue, was really big. When those factories closed, that shut Maywood down. That really destroyed Maywood economy, when they closed those plants and moved overseas and things like that. But we were raised to go to college, and to get an education, and then that's it. I mean, like the next thing is to get a good job.
I've heard people online, and of course, it's bothering me because it's not true, but they say stuff like it's been a tough economy and this and that. And the truth is, the stock market is making all-time highs,
Yeah,
and it tells a lot about what we're communicating in our community. And I mean the Black community. And
yeah,
so, in a lot of ways, we still see this big push to go to college and to borrow money and to do
yeah,
so. That there's
yeah,
gonna be a big set of money, 80, 90, $100,000 a year for you.
yeah,
And now everybody's finding out that's true. But that momentum is so strong. How do you
yeah.
change that?
Yeah, I mean, you got to change the narrative. Like, you hear about the economy is as worst it's ever been. No, no, no. Stop listening and watching Fox News and
Yeah,
all
right.
these other outlets that lie and put false news as Bunker Boy, Agent Orange, put out there. His economy was strong for the wealthy. It wasn't strong for the underprivileged or underserved communities. We didn't prosper. Maywood certainly did not prosper. The middle to low income communities did not prosper. Under the Biden administration, we prospered more than even recent history, including President Obama. And that has something to say when you think about the strength of the economy right now, under the Biden administration, is really second to none. And it's not about supporting Obama or being apologist for Biden, rather, or Trump. It's the facts. Just do your own research, and you can't
So
believe everything you see.
yeah, so there's some things that
Like,
I
so the American Health Care Act, right? That was
mhm,
established by President Obama. Trump, what did Trump try to do? He tried to destroy it. He
yeah.
lost. He lost, and he had the majority, House and Senate. He lost, and all they're saying about, of course, the billions of dollars that's being sent to Ukraine and everything like that. People agree, people disagree, whatever. And you think about how what Trump did in terms of giving money, having his $100 billion deal with the Saudi government, not pulling the troops from Iraq, the tax cut for the wealthy, that kind of thing to keep the money circulating, and then practicing Reaganomics. Reaganomics didn't work for the Black community. It just didn't. So I see Trustee Jones. Hey, Trustee Jones.
Yes, sir. Hey, so this is a tough place for me to be, right? Because Um, Here are the facts. We have lived through the greatest wealth creation period in the history of the world. Our generation, right?
Yep.
Started about 1967.
Yep.
We are living through the greatest wealth transfer in the history of the world as well.
Yep.
And so, um, when I talk about did we pick correctly when we chose to get behind education, um, the stock market has steadily increased. Even if we jump to 2008, right, and then of course the 2020 COVID economy, right? Um, all of those things created great opportunities for us to benefit from the stock market.
Right.
But somehow we can't get people to engage well enough to just be involved. They'd rather go in to say, I'm going to host a class, right? And then inside the class, they don't know what they're teaching.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. It's a tough hurdle.
Well, my perspective and Trustee Jones talked about education is important. I think we all agree to that. It does create options for you. If that education is a certificate for a training program, where you mentioned HVAC or nursing or whatever the case may be, some type of technical skill, or getting a college degree, associate degree, a bachelor's degree, master's degree, whatever the case may be. It creates options, but the key is you're educated. It means you're trained. You don't go on social media saying, I feel my heart desire. We need to talk about finance because it feels good to be emotionally talking about finance. No, negative. That's the wrong approach. You're going to be killing a lot of people out here with that
I
false
know.
narrative. Like,
Yeah.
what are your credentials? Okay, you have a degree, you have a certificate, you have a training, you are certified financial something. Then you can speak about the emotions of finance because it is part emotions, part logic. But the Trustee Jones, you're educated, and it creates options. In Maywood, we went through the academic halls of academia, got our education, but we did not reinvest in our community. So
Hmm.
we took those options away. So that money that was circulating multiple times in the 70s and the part of the 80s, that does not exist. It just doesn't. And all you got to do is just look. Now, Maywood is starting to make some moves and things like that. They're doing the best they can. Um, but that's from the top down. What about the bottom up? What about the people in the middle?
Yeah.
You shouldn't rely solely on government to build the economy. Because at the end of the day, we are a consumer driven industry. We
I'm
are
glad you
70%
said.
of the economy is consumer driven, not
I'm glad you
government
said
driven,
that.
consumer.
Well, the data is telling us that people are not saving, they're not investing, they're spending money, and they're spending it on credit cards. The debt ratio for credit cards is higher than it was pre-COVID. So when you see your neighbor looking like they're killing it, know that they might not be. Right?
So check it out. So my insurance company, car insurance, man, it's crazy. So we get a renewal notice. That sucker went up $160.
Hmm.
The renewal 160. I'm like, wait a second. Normally, when you renew, you're older, you're safer, you have no citations, no points on your driver's license. The rate goes down,
Hmm.
goes down. So I called the insurance provider, like, why did you increase my rate by $160? You know, and it's like, well, because the teenager discount no longer qualify because he's 19 years old. So find another
Hmm.
discount. And then it was COVID really kept our prices down. Ding, 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 ding. So now they're making up the difference from how they were impacted through COVID. Because you know why? Nobody was driving.
Yeah.
Nobody was driving. So now there are people who are hybrid or working from home or whatever, virtual, or some who work in the office, but they got to make their money somehow. So they increase the rate. So after threatening to go with someone else, um, they worked it down to more manageable. We're still higher than before. That's the norm. So costs are higher, not because of Biden. It's not because of President Biden. Even though people say that crap, it's not.
Yeah.
That's fake news, as Bunker
Yeah.
Boy says. So we got to be. That's how you become educated, Terry. That's how you become educated, audience. Do your own research. Do your own due diligence, so you get the real truth, the real facts. And that's the
So
challenge that Maywood faces in other communities.
so we should continue this another day and not hold everybody's.
Why? This is we're on a roll.
I know, right? um,
But we should
but
be talking about this in churches. We should continue to talk about this in churches. We should have a financial curriculum in the schools. 89, 209 need to step it up. We need financial education, not financial literacy. We're not talking
mhm.
about budget or understanding credit. No, some real talk about finances. Because guess what? They doing it everywhere else.
Yeah, the a lot of this conversation, what people are interested in is closing the wealth gap. And so when they get into having conversations about saying we're going to do financial literacy, it's not about closing wealth gap. It's about knowing your credit score and leveraging credit and things like this. But um, those are tough conversations because one thing that I always say, if nobody remembers anything else, you have the same risk whether you own individual stocks or whether you own mutual funds.
Yeah,
And when you are talking to somebody and they say the opposite, you know, um, again, start questioning who you're listening to. And
absolutely.
I'll say that very bold statement, but Warren Buffett, who is arguably one of the most successful investors in the history of America, what does he say? Well, you should own a mutual fund, an S&P 500 fund, right? But the question is, why does he say it? He says it because most people are not going to do the work to understand the companies.
Right,
Most people don't know how to read a balance sheet. Most
right.
people don't know how to read the income statement. So then
Yep,
it becomes very difficult for you to
yep.
properly value the company. But he himself, he is a mutual fund, right?
Right, right, right.
So if we're going
Yeah.
to close the wealth gap, guess what? Um, and change the trajectory of our families.
Mm-hmm.
You can do it through mutual funds, but
Yep.
please understand that your risk remains the same if you
Yep.
own a mutual fund and an individual stock. If you want to know why, I'm not going to tell you. You're going to have to reach out to Dr. Ratliff, get enrolled in one of the master classes.
Absolutely. And let me say this before we sign off, Terry. One of the things I'd like for us to do is to continue to share our knowledge and expertise about the world of finance and economics, not just to my hometown of Maywood, but Proviso Township. I know the Best of Proviso is doing great things with Randy McFarland. Shout out to Randy McFarland and the committee, and or Jessica Jackson, who I'm working with to help individuals start their businesses or write grant and business proposals and things like that. And I'm greatly appreciative of the referrals that we receive to help
Mm-hmm.
those write grants, because there are grants now for small businesses, particularly Black female-owned businesses, because that's something that they're really pushing, and there's a demand for that. But at the same time, we do need to do our homework. We do need to have these classes in the school. So my hope and prayer is that we're able to continue to come to Chicago, because we're doing it here in the DMV. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
classes and stuff. You're doing great things at Iowa. You travel to different areas as well, offering your expertise. But for me, home is where the heart is, and it's Maywood. And I would love for us to continue to come to Maywood, whether it's Second Baptist or Miracle Revival Center, Cathedral, or Progressive, or Rock of Ages, First Baptist. I mean, those places where they have in mass visitors and members coming to the sit in the pulpit every single Sunday, even the pew, you in the pew, you minister. We talk about Malachi 3 and 10 and finance from, from Exodus all the way to Revelation,
Mm-hmm.
even some in Genesis, all 66 books. I mean, you want to be able to have a knowledgeable community. That's another way to get through education. And when you know better, you do better.
Yes, sir.
So
So how does a person reach out to you?
So you can reach out to me by my email address, through my email address, sratliff68@yahoo.com. Any questions you might have for me, or even for Terry, because he is the investment expert when it comes to the world of finance. But please reach out to me, and we'll be more than happy to invite you to our Master of Finance class and share our knowledge about the world of finance. Shout out to Renita Gales out there. She may not be turning in tonight, but she was one of the first individual professionals who worked in the world of finance back then at a bank. Some almost 20 years ago, we went to her house on the South Side to talk about the world of finance to her family. And so we have no problem doing that. Remember that? She and
Yeah.
her husband Dwayne and her children and cousins and them came over,
Yes,
Bronzeville.
sir.
So we love that kind of stuff. We have no problem. We'll go to a mansion or we'll go to an alley. It don't matter. We just want to be educated. As long as the alley stage, we want to be.
Look, there's some truth to that. As I say, one thing that's true for me is when I think about my parents, how differently they would have been about money, and they wasn't terrible with money,
Right.
but
Of
it's the
course.
difference between, if you look at easily there was $1 million left on the table, right?
Yeah.
And that would have been that would have been significant.
Right.
So
Well, they didn't rely so much on like credit card debt and stuff either, Terry, like we do today. They did do cash, and
yeah,
though if it was loan, it was it wasn't 100%, but
it was
they
for a
saved
car,
money.
it was for a home,
Yeah, yeah,
those kind of loans, right?
yeah. Where it has real fixed assets, long-term assets, machinery, equipment, starting your business, a capital campaign, a
Mm-hmm.
home, like you said, and that kind of thing. So we need to get back to that mindset. There's nothing wrong with that mindset at all, because the Bible says the borrower is a slave to a lender. So I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
owe anybody. We shouldn't have a debt to income ratio of 65%. We just shouldn't. So we want to encourage everyone to tune in.
Yep. I
So
I agree. So listen, so till next time. Um I would be here all night talking about this because I actually do like talking about finance.
yes, sir.
Um, but we would do this again. If you have any questions, send them to Dr. Ratliff. We'll cover them on
Yes,
here, and
absolutely.
we'll do a good job of trying to make this right for the community.
And Terry, he's given. If you have a question, this brother here, he's been in this for several decades, and
Since
he knows what he's
'97.
talking about. So that's 27 years, going on 27 years. So he knows what he's talking about. He's in tune with the world of finance. He's offering free advice. Ask your questions. Don't get too deep because that'll be separate conversation. You have to charge you for real. Sure enough. So keep it basic. I mean, not basic, but don't. But what should I invest all my money in Meta? What is what is the dividend rate for
Yeah,
Amazon?
right.
But seriously, tune in, like us on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube. Tell your friends, your families, your enemies about this program because this is an important program for the community. We started this podcast for the village of Maywood to start off. That's why it's called Let's Talk Maywood.
Yeah.
And we want all the village of Maywood to tune in. So we're offering this for free because we love what we do.
All right.
That's it.
So till next time, people.
Peace out. God bless you. Be safe. And good night.